Oh, you'll find out. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble here. Thank you for coming to the Candidates Forum for the Granada Community Services District. All right. This is a chance for you, the ratepayers and community members, to gather and hear directly from our candidates who will be right here on stage. Okay. They are the people running to serve on this district board, a very important board. How important? Well, you don't want your sewer to fail, right? This year we have 4 candidates running for 2 seats, which is very exciting for local government because in the past we've had a dearth of candidates. Now we have 2x. So you'll have choices this year. That's very good. Okay, I also want to thank the organizers and sponsors of this event. Sponsors, Jetty Wave, for hosting us today. Really appreciate that. Michelle Westendorf, if you can hear me, thank you very much for offering us this lovely space. Also, this event is organized by the Coastside Civic Engagement Group, which is a collection of neighbors who aim to encourage community engagement in local politics and charitable activities. They are Natalie, Down, Simon Williamson, Michelle Dragony, and Melinda McNaughton. Thank you very much for helping out here today and organizing this. Folks, they organized this in like a week, and organizing a candidates forum is extremely difficult. There's a lot of details that you have to worry about in terms of presentation, but also to have a fair and neutral platform. Questions that are appropriate and illuminating. It's hard, and they pulled it together in a week. So we, as the ratepayers, should feel very fortunate that they were able to pull this together. Okay, now everybody's ready. Let's get to the candidates. Okay, starting over here. I'll have to face this way because if I say this way, starting on my, I'll get all confused. Starting on my right here, we have Wanda Bowles. If you could raise your hand. Wanda, hello. Okay, next to her, we have Nancy Marsh. Nancy, okay. And Janet Brayer. Good morning. Good afternoon, Janet. Iris Grant is not able to make it tonight. She is the 4th candidate on the ballot. Okay. I want to start by setting some context here. We hopefully are all either ratepayers or community members or interested in what's going on with local politics. But what is the Granada Community Services District? It's a locally formed special district that delivers 3 specialized services, including wastewater collection and treatment, solid waste collection, and parks and recreation services in the communities of El Granada, Princeton, Clipper Ridge, Miramar, and Frenchman's Creek. GCSD was originally formed in 1958, and GCSD is responsible for the operation and maintenance of the sewer collection system and sewer services within the district. So again, this is the district that you don't want to hear about because if you do, it's not good. Okay, next page. All right. GCSD is a member of the Joint Powers Authority that formed the Sewer Authority Mid-Coastside, known as SAM, in 1976. Where does it all go? It goes in a big pipe, and it goes down to the SAM plant, which is around just north of Half Moon Bay. You might take a tour of that plant sometime just to see where it is. You can't see it from the road, which probably a good thing. But it's an interesting location, and we should all know how and where our waste is processed. For solid waste collection, GCSD oversees the franchise agreement with Recology of the Coastside and has jurisdiction of the implementation and enforcement of state regulations with regard to recycling, composting, and edible food recovery. So that's 2 of the 3 parts. The third part, in 2014, GCSD gained parks and recreation powers following approval of ballot measure G by over 60% of district voters. GCSD has a 5-member locally elected board of directors. These board members serve 4-year terms and are elected on a staggered 2-year basis in even numbered years. If you can follow all that math, 2 of these 4 people will be elected in this even numbered year. Okay. Directors are elected at large and must live within the rate-paying district. Board members meet regularly on the 3rd Thursday of each month with occasional special meetings happening as needed. Board members are expected to thoroughly read agenda packets in advance of meetings and be prepared to discuss the contents. The board elects 2 of its own members each year to represent GCSD on the SAM board, which meets twice monthly. Okay, let's get into the rules of engagement here. Okay, it's really important to the organizers of this event and probably the candidates as well, and to you, that everybody have a fair chance to answer the questions, that the questions are fair, so that you, the voters, can decide for yourself who it is that you want to vote for. Okay, each candidate will have 3 minutes for an opening statement, and then they will have 2 minutes for a closing statement. We drew at random to see what order the opening statements would be presented in. The closing statements will be presented in reverse order. Each candidate will be allowed 2 minutes to answer their questions when we get to the questions. If a question is addressed to a particular candidate, that candidate will get to answer first. Each candidate will get the same question. That way you will be able to determine what each person has to say about that specific question. If one of the candidates has something to add or wants a follow-up, please raise your hand. If we have time and we can do it, I will recognize you when all the candidates have answered the question first. Then we'll come back for follow-up comments. Again, raise your hand. I'll recognize you. You have about a minute for the follow-up. I say about a minute because we want them to get their thought out. But like me, some people will fill the entire volume given to them with however much time they have. So you got to cut them off. And that's Natalie's giving me the move it on. Okay. I'm getting there, Natalie. I'm getting there. Candidates, please. No talking or shouting over your fellow candidates. No asides, no grumbling, no deep sighs. Same for the audience. Okay, let's give these people a chance. It takes a lot of courage to run for political office or governmental office. It takes a lot of courage, and then to get up on stage in front of your neighbors and answer questions that you don't know what the questions are going to be. It takes a lot of courage. So give them your respect. Time limits will be strictly adhered to. We've got our time cards right here. And decorum. I just mentioned for the candidates, also for the audience. Respectful, professional, and considerate. If a candidate or a member of the audience is misbehaving, swearing, yelling over the top of people, they'll get a couple warnings, but if it continues, we'll have to ask that person to leave because we're really trying to hear what these people have to say. So I don't expect that's going to be an issue. Okay, are we ready? Are we ready? Let's go. Yes, okay. Here we go. You didn't think it would be interactive, huh? It is. Because when we go to our break at 6:45, 6:50, sorry. 5:50. What time zone am I in here? Okay. During the break, there's sticky notepads all around. You will have a chance to write your questions down. The second half of this forum is going to be the candidates answering your questions. These questions right now are pre-scripted because we had to have something to start with. After the break, it's going to be your questions. So think hard about what you want to hear from them. Okay, we're starting with our opening comments. And number one is Janet. Go ahead, Janet.
Yay, Janet. I was talking to Bob Wright and to this earlier today. So first off, I'd really like to thank Natalie for arranging this. There's a lot of work she put together, and the turnout is great. And it gives us a chance to talk, and I'm happy that the candidates made it there. So my name is Janet Brayer. I was born in San Francisco and raised on the peninsula. And I've been coming over to the coast since I was in third grade on a regular basis. Either my dad taking me fishing or my dear girlfriend's father owned Ida's Burger, which is now Sam's. So we used to go there every Saturday. So I've seen a lot of changes on the coast. And I'm running because I think that the scheme, I'm focusing more on the parks because sewers take a long time to learn about. Very long with sewers, but that's not particularly why I'm running. So I'm running because I think that the community hasn't been listened to in regard to their preferences, and that the survey raw core data doesn't support what's being done. So I met with a lot of constituents, and I think this plan is a little bit grandiose for Granada, and it's not what the people particularly want, and the concerns about parking are real. So that's a few of the reasons I'm running, along with my fiscal responsibility concern, because the projected cost of over $7 million, which is in 2019, you know what happened post-COVID, was over 3 times reserves, and the GCSD went into debt 1.8 million just to buy the Picasso. So I was waiting for my 1 minute. Okay.
You still have time. You've got time.
I was like, okay, well. So so they went into that. They bought Picasso in 2019. They learned about it in May. They bought it in July. They didn't tell anybody. Their intention was to essentially demolish Picasso and build a community center. The raw data from the surveys taken in 2019 never asked this simple question: do you want a community center or an event center? So that question's never been asked. They move forward without telling the public what they want to do. I think we need more transparency, and I think when people, the public, go to the meetings, they should be listened to and given the opportunity to be put on the agenda, which isn't happening now. Thank you. Those are my opening remarks.
Okay, thank you very much, Janet. Well said. Okay, number 2, Wanda, you're up.
All right, good evening. Thank you for gathering here today. My name is Wanda Bowles, and I'm honored to be here before you as a board member candidate for the GCSD. As a longtime resident of this wonderful community, I've had the privilege of witnessing firsthand the strength, resilience, and the spirit that defines all of us. A little about me. So since retiring from my corporate responsibilities a year ago, I've been working with senior Coastsiders, where I designed and implemented a weekly technology schedule of classes, and I also provide one-on-one tutoring, tech tutoring specifically. I really love making a difference in the lives of our older adults to help them bridge the technology gap. This enriches their lives and opens them up to a new level of communication with friends and family. I'm also the technology director for the Coastside Women's Club that is dedicated to raising funds and providing scholarships to our Half Moon Bay seniors. Last year, we gave 10 scholarships to deserving Half Moon Bay seniors that totaled $60,000. My platform is built on 4 core principles: engagement, listening, collaboration, and accountability. Engagement is at the heart of a thriving community. I believe in actively involving all residents in the decision-making process. By fostering a culture of engagement, we can ensure that everyone has a stake in our community's future. Listening and collaboration are essential to effective leadership. I am committed to being a representative who listens to your concerns, ideas, and aspirations. Together, we can identify the areas that need improvement and work collectively to find solutions. Listening. I will support holding regular open forums and maintain an open door policy to ensure that every voice is heard. Your input will be invaluable to shaping our future community. Collaboration is key to achieving our goals, so by working together, we can identify the areas that need improvement and find innovative solutions. Together, we can create a stronger, more connected community. Finally, I believe in accountability. Transparency and responsibility are crucial in managing our community's resources. I will advocate for clear and open financial practices, ensuring that every dollar is spent wisely by prioritizing projects that offer the greatest benefits and seeking out innovative funding solutions we can achieve our goals without compromising our financial stability. In conclusion, I'm passionate about our community and dedicated to serving you. Together we can build a brighter future, one that is inclusive, prosperous, and sustainable. I humbly ask for your support and your vote.
Okay, thank you, Wanda. And Nancy Marsh.
Hi, my name is Nancy Marsh. I've been a resident of Granada for about 9 years now. When I was a working person, I was one of those type A, 60-hour-a-week and traveling 80 days a year people. And my first half of my career in medical labs, I was a licensed medical technologist and worked through all of the various functions to where I was running a medical laboratory with about 400 employees and 30 million budget at one point, about 20 years ago. I think that's relevant to the sewers, actually. When I tour the wastewater treatment plant, all that biochemistry is very familiar to me, although the technology is a little simpler than what you use for lab tests. The second half of my career, I was poached out of that general manager job into the corporate HR office to run the corporation's company culture and leadership programs, and then into a job heading HR for a global R&D organization. Part of my role in that was employee surveys. I feel really strongly about reaching out to everybody who will fill out the survey and really focusing on the consensus of what people said. There are always, the most frustrating thing about doing surveys is that people will always cherry pick the parts that they agree with and ignore the rest, which I think is really disrespectful to the hundreds of people who respond to these guys. So the reason that I'm running again is partly because after 4 years, I think I need to do my duty on the SAM board, particularly as the lawsuit is settled with Half Moon Bay, hopefully next summer, which may change a lot about how the whole JPA and sewer side of the organization runs, which is really the most critical part of what GCSD does, and to maintain a focus on the voice of the whole community. The board changes, the park and rec center are much more sexy. People have pay more attention to them. They have stronger opinions about them. Really, I feel important to protect the voices of all the people who filled out surveys, who sent in emails. For our park review, I responded to every one of the 100 emails that came in commenting on the park design, and making sure that we don't let late breaking voices that have a view on one or another change those, change what the community as a whole, all 2,000 residents have asked for. There are a couple other things that I do in the community. I know some people from Coastside Hope. In addition to serving on the board of GCSD for 4 years, on the Parks Advisory Committee for 3 years before that. So I've got 7 years invested in these projects. I'm also president of the board of Coastside Hope and managed over the last year the build out and their move to their new building in Half Moon Bay, which I'm also really proud of. So watch the news for Coastside Hope as well.
Okay, thank you, candidates. Okay, now we're going to jump into our pre-scripted questions, and I'm already going off script because I'm going to change the order, because one thing I've heard from the candidate intros was discussion of what the community wants. And I think that this is a difficult thing for local government to assess. So the question is, and this question, Wanda, we'll start with you, and then we'll go to Nancy, and then Janet, you will have the last answer on this. How will you build, assess, and quantify community and board consensus with regard to future decision-making on impactful projects?
That's a good question. And I think that gets back to one of my core principles, which is really about engagement. Engaging the community is really a very difficult, can be a very difficult challenge. And so, building on what currently has been going on the board, I would be committed to continuing that engagement, whether it's surveys, to make sure that we're gathering the appropriate information and responding to what's important for our community.
Okay. Nancy?
When I was first applied to be on the Parks Advisory Committee, I was interviewed by one of the board members, Matthew Clark, who asked me, he said, well, I guess with the Parks Advisory Committee, which had seven people on it, he said, we want to get people who represent different demographics of the community. So what demographic do you think that you represent? And I said, 60-year-old ladies who used to work in healthcare? I don't know. I don't think that I think actually there must have been a view at one point that the Volunteer Parks Advisory Committee would be the community input, representing different parts of the community. By the time I joined the Parks Advisory Board, Barbara Dye was on the board and asked the Parks Advisory Board to do as much as they can to get as much outreach from as many people as they could. And as Wanda mentioned, this is not easy. There's no mailing list. There's no, because the GCSD doesn't do its own billing, it's kind of hard to reach out. The Parks Advisory Committee, which included Pat Tierney, who's a professor of Parks and Recreation and Tourism, was one of the communication team with me, and Michelle Dragony, the Coastal Butterfly. We used everything we could put our hands on. We sent mail, we had articles in the newspaper, we posted things on Nextdoor, we always got a free posting on Coastside Buzz. I know that those various things work because sometimes we put a link on Nextdoor and we got a lot of responses on that link. We got paper responses from what we made. And so all that comes into the Parks Advisory Committee, who managed all the data and provided it to the board. I think what we could do better, I think we probably need to reconvene the Parks Advisory Committee once all of the designs were done. They kind of faded, but when we get into more detail, I think we'll reconvene them and get them engaging the community again.
Okay, thank you, Nancy. Janet, if you want me to repeat, if any of the candidates want me to repeat the question, because I know like after a couple minutes, like, what was the question again? If you need me to repeat it, I will. If you're ready to go for it. Okay, go for it.
So, how do you know what the public wants? That's a question a lot of people ask. I think one thing you need to look at is how did we get here? What was the history on this? And our moderator touched on Prop G that was passed. Prop G was passed because people were for years and years, and they were concerned about the development of the Burnham Strip. So that's historically where this idea of preserving the strip came from. And at that point in time, the people involved, if you look back at the data and articles, etc., they were talking about having a tranquil, open space that was somewhat followed the Burnham plan. This Burnham plan for which El Granada was developed, where we had open space, where we had like cantilevers so people would have views. And then that Burnham Strip was an open area for people to have vistas, for people to walk. So I think we need to get some more survey information out there where we ask direct questions and so far as what we have thoughts of now and whether they're approved or not.
Okay. Did I see a hand for a follow-up? Okay. So you'll have 1 minute for a follow-up, Nancy.
It won't take that long. I just want to point out that all of the community input that the Parks Advisory Committee generated is available on the GCSD website, on the Parks page. It was important to us that people see their voices, and if they didn't think they were heard, they could look at the actual raw material and see whether everybody agreed with them or not. And so we've tried to be very transparent with all of the input we have, and I really encourage people to go look at the source data. Thanks. That's all I wanted to say. It's all on the web.
Both of you would like, both of you. Okay. We'll start over here. Wanda.
Yeah, I just have one follow-up with regard to the Burnham Strip. And I know that so much work has gone into it over the years. But one thing that I want to make sure that we move forward on is our community continues to change and grow, and we need to make sure that we're taking into account what our residents need and want. So, having a strip that is just doesn't serve any other purpose is one thing versus having something that the community can actually use. Having trails, having something that most families and older adults can use as well.
Okay. Janet?
Thank you. Yeah, I do encourage people to look at the raw source data for the survey. I think it'll prove my point that the raw data has been skewed insofar as what we're being presented with, and that the raw data was actually not looked at. And you can find there's an appendix, and yes, you can read all the comments on the website. It's an appendix A, I believe, and I think that we should all get involved here.
All right. I would like, Janet, I'd like to ask you a follow-up, and then Nancy and Wanda, you'll be able to respond to Janet's. Well, you mentioned skewed, which could be a loaded term or not a loaded term, depending on, I'm not sure. I'm wondering, when you say the data was skewed, in what way?
Well, I believe it was Nancy that used the word cherry pick. I think that it appears to me when I look at the raw data that certain data elements were cherry picked. For example, if you look at the data regarding parking, most people responded that they wanted more parking or the same, not less. So what did we end up with? We ended up with less. I could go through other examples. So that's what I mean, that if you look at the actual question, and one of the big questions that was never asked is, do you want a community or an event center? The question was posed, assuming we had one, what would you like with it? And of course, people went crazy. We'd like a pool, we'd like this, we'd like that, right? So I think that's what I mean when I say that I think the raw data hasn't been properly analyzed.
All right. I just want to clarify. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that, because you didn't mean that it was somehow corrupted and falsified. It was just cherry picked was the term you're using. Okay. Do either of you want to comment on that? Okay. Nancy?
I'm actually glad the parking example came up. In Janet's candidate statement, she made that same statement that people wanted the same or more parking. There is no question on that survey that says, do you want the same or more parking? They're separate questions. And what she did with the numbers in the candidate statement is take the very important numbers for same, add them together with the very important responses for larger, and then compare that to smaller. You could, by the same logic, take the numbers for same, add them to the numbers for smaller, and come up with the exact opposite conclusion. The way those should be looked at, because you're either positive or negative on those, is the net positive. Same like for Kamala Harris, her favorables minus unfavorables equals her net. When you do that, the only positive response is the same size parking. Less parking is unfavorable by about 35 points. More parking is unfavorable by 45 points. So is the least favored. The parking that lot holds now versus the new plan is reduced by 9 parking places. But there are 57 parking places available all along.
Okay, I'm going to cut you off, Nancy, because time's up. But also, I'll just let the cat out of the bag. I think we might have a parking question coming up. So hold your parking thoughts if you can't. Wanda, would you like to respond? Nope. Okay. All right. Moving on to the next question. And we'll start with Nancy on this. We're cycling through. If you are elected, what will the question is top 3 priorities, but let's go with your top 2 priorities because we want to get to some other questions. What would be your top 2 priorities if you get elected?
I think the really top one for me looking forward over the next 4 years is on the Sewer Authority Mid-Coast, after 7 years of operating under the specter of the Half Moon Bay lawsuit, that will come to an end. It's had a significant impact on the board and the board dynamics, which is 2 members from GCSD, 2 from MWSD, and 2 from Half Moon Bay. If Half Moon Bay wins, which seems unlikely but possible, it could change dramatically the joint powers agreement and how it works and costs specifically for GCSD. So I think that actually is job 1. through the next year, GCSD is just at the beginning of the permitting process for the park and rec center. And so that's really out of our hands. That's when you find out what you'd be allowed to do and what costs are added or what requirements are added. And so we will have to adjust as that additional information comes in.
Okay, thank you. Next up is Janet. So your top two priorities if you get elected.
My top two priorities. I think one of the utmost priorities is to be fiscally responsible here. We have no real budget. The budget that we have was going back, pre-COVID, and it's if you use that number without adjusting for inflation, and we all know how much more it costs to build post-COVID than pre-COVID, you're looking at over 3 times the reserves. So where are we going to get this money from? This plan that's been put together has not been well thought through, and it's going to lead to more taxes. I understand we have property tax revenue of approximately $900,000. We get some school money, but it's called ERAP, which is excess funds from school districts that come to the state to minimize. So if that's gone, the budget's being blown, and so that's a top priority for me. Another one is I'm not anti doing anything in the Strip. I think it has to be done in a manner where we preserve the tranquility that's there, and which is a part of the community. And the topography must stay the same. They have these berms they're putting in. Why are we changing the topography of a natural wetland that most communities, and I know our community, is proud to have and wants to preserve? But we can use it, but it has to be in a thoughtful manner.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Janet. And Wanda, your top two priorities.
My first priority would be to utilizing my business experience.
I think it's a little closer to your mouth, and GCSD has no control over the airport.
Well, my first priority would be to bring my years of business experience to provide oversight to the current program with the sewer authority. Obviously, that's very, very important. And then secondly, of course, would be to continue the momentum to have the appropriate park and recreation area for the community.
Okay. We're going to go right to the meat now because we're running out of time. Okay. Let's go back to parking. This question will be for Wanda. You will start. The new community park in the Burnham Strip proposes 55 marked parking spots. Do you think the parking plans are adequate for this project?
Yes, I do. I think the parking is adequate. There's also additional parking on the frontage road there of Bespoke. So I don't really see any changes that need to happen with parking.
Okay. Next up is Nancy.
Actually, the sentiment from the surveys from the questions was really the same sentiment we heard once Caltrans plans became public and their plans to eliminate all parking on Highway 1 between Coronado and Capistrano. And the sentiment there is people don't want more traffic coming into the neighborhood and parking on the streets. That is the same sentiment that we heard that sort of supported, we want the same size parking lot, but not more, because we don't want more people coming. There was actually another question there. They got some votes that said, how about no parking? It's adequate for now. Every time I drive by the dirt lot, I take a look at how many cars are there. On everything but the sunniest weekends like the one we just had, it's somewhere between 10 and 30. And so at that end of the park that people tend to use for going to the beach, there's 24 in the lot, 12 angled parking, so 30 sits at that end, and you can park for the park all along the Bispo. It's adequate for a park. It's not adequate to absorb all of the cars if Caltrans eliminates all the parking on Highway 1. And GCSD has provided a support letter that came from me as president to the appeal to the California Coastal Commission for that project, in which Caltrans did not highlight all the parking, about more than 100 spots being eliminated, because they say parking was never legal on Highway 1, therefore they don't have to mitigate the absence of it. And that's really the basis for the appeal from Catherine Slater Carter and Len Erickson to the California Coastal Commission. Until they rule on it, we won't really know what happens. But the option that we have with the park, it's going to be developed in phases. It's not going to be built all at once. We can leave the dirt lot for last and wait and see what happens. You know, that could be years away. And so it's not got a building plan yet, and so there's still some flexibility.
Okay. Janet, 55 spots, is that enough?
55 spots. Well, I'm not a little unclear where we're getting the 55 spots from. I'd like to address one comment that the jetty lot. I've gone down and counted the cars. It can park over 150. When I look at the Burnham plan, I see that where they're moving it, there's 20 parking spots. We've got 20 there. Then we have 10 if you want to count the event center, but I don't think we should even be talking about an event center or community center. So we're going to have 20 spots. Then we're going to have parallel spots, which I guess is where you get to the 55. There has been no traffic mitigation study at all, even though the Coastal Commission is going to require this. This park's going to have to go through the California Coastal Commission. And I have talked to attorneys. I am an attorney. I've talked to experts. That Coastal Commission is going to require a traffic mitigation report. And this has never been done. If we have the cars going like this is going to be a nightmare. What's going to happen when we need that fire truck to come out? You know, plus when we have the traffic, it's going to block up that whole road. It's just not a well thought out plan to have, you know, that type of parking and then count that to get to your 55. So I don't think the 55 number is realistic.
Okay. So the 55, you don't feel it's realistic, but so whether it's adequate or not, you're setting that question aside because you're not agreeing with the number itself.
Yeah. Even
okay.
If it was 55, I don't think that's adequate.
That's not adequate either. Okay.
Times, but I don't see how we get to 55 where we're taking up the street and causing safety concerns for the entire community.
Okay. Nancy, did I see your hand? Okay. Nancy, 1 minute.
One of them, having heard the traffic concerns, Hope Atmore, who's the Assistant General Manager of GCSD, and I met with Deputy Greg Silva and the Public Works Director at the fire station, showed them the plan. They pointed out that during the CDP process with the county, the fire marshal will review the plans. They think it's a wide enough street so that if cars are parked all the way along one side, it's not an issue. But the fire marshal will review the plan, and if they request changes, then we would have to make changes.
If anybody's interested in the plan that we're talking about, there are GCSD materials over here, including a mapping of the proposed project. Did you want to make any follow-up comment? Okay. All right. This one we'll start with you on this one, Janet. A new community center is planned for the parcel that is currently the location of Picasso Preschool. What is your vision for this location and how would you proceed?
I don't have a vision for that because I don't think it's allowed pursuant to the charter that Granada Community Services District. How we got the services district is you apply for this via an agency called LAFCO, which puts together the commissions, and then they give you rules of the road. Well, I was looking at an attorney opinion that was actually written at the request of GCSD in regard to whether we can have a preschool. Well, what the attorney said is that it is impermissible and not allowed. There's specific powers, but some powers we do not have. And one of the powers we do not have is to, quote, acquire, construct, improve, maintain, and operate recreational facilities, including but not limited to, and goes on, and it would be a community center, et cetera, et cetera. So that once again, this attorney report that clearly says this is not allowed was taken apart and said, "Oh, we can't use it for a preschool." Well, we do not have the power for a community event center to develop or construct. So that has to be looked into before we even jump the gun. And we never should have bought Picasso.
This attorney opinion, is this a county attorney, a LAFCO attorney?
This is an attorney that was hired by GCSD.
By GC.
If anybody wants to email me, I will send you that attorney report that talks about the powers that GCSD has and does not have. And they refer to the government code sections. So that's where I'm getting my info from, and I'd be happy to email it to anyone.
Thank you. Okay, I believe we're on to Wanda now. Yes, I certainly can. A new community center is planned for the parcel that is currently the location of Picasso Preschool. What is your vision for this location, and how would you proceed?
I feel very positive about having some sort of community center for. I know that it's going to take several phases to probably get to that point. But I do think that having something for our community for emergency response, I know that the senior co-siders is interested in having programs for older adults in a community center that could be planned here in El Granada. From Half Moon Bay to El Granada to have additional